Hey, it's your buddy, maladjusted adult shonen fan. It's once again the arbitrary time of year in which I review bra my way through the KFC Double Downs and Taco Bell seafood salad of manga, which I enjoy. I wouldn't have done this again otherwise. Feel like that should be pretty obvious. Although if I'm going to do this every year, I'd like to have these videos more to the point. I think trying to talk about my feelings on review fit well for this topic. It's why I did it for the 2023 version, but I'd rather keep it simple. No reason to try and find some tangentially related idea to talk about with these manga every year. Besides, you're watching this because you either want to have your disappointment on a series you liked getting canceled affirmed, or learn about some lesser known manga that could be cool, but never read it. I know why you're here. Well, actually, I do have a few things related to this crop of canceled manga that I'd like to bring to the class in hopes of creating some kind of through line. Not directly, but in ways that are exciting for those of us who spend our time dredging through mediocrity. Trying to find that one lesser known series that's really good, actually, in an attempt of social cool points. The first of which being, hey, Black Torch is getting an anime, which is wild. I'm sure at least a few of you watching are asking, what even is Black Torch? And that's the point. The fact that a manga that I would have talked about on a theoretical version of this channel that started a few years earlier has been brought to the table for adaptation is fascinating. I haven't read it at time of writing, but I'm desperate to see how this plays out. Assuming the average of 3 to 4 chapters per episode, there's only like 4 to 5 episodes worth of manga to adapt. I'm sure they could fill it out to be a little 6-episode OVA, but they could potentially expand it further into a 12-episode season. I definitely don't think anime is the end goal of manga, but I think taking a series that ended prematurely but showed promise and using an adaptation to further expand on it is a great idea. I'd love to see this with the original creators brought on to serve a role in the production as well, but I'll take what I can get. That's also assuming they'd even be interested. The meat grinder of weekly manga has creators forced to be face-to-face, exclusive to those characters and world. To just have them ripped away in a cancellation and then revived by someone else could probably feel a little alienating. Like experiencing the death of a loved one, then seeing them brought back, but wrong. Hopefully, this next point isn't a bleak plant and payoff for the 2025 manga video, but have you read that The Martial King? It's pretty good. It's got a teenage boy doing a fighting, and he also goes to a school where they all do the fighting, but this time it's cowboys and 6-shooters. Yeah, the story is nothing revolutionary, but what draws me to The Martial King is Boichi's illustrations. If you don't know that name, he's the guy who did the art for Dr. Stone, and The Martial King just feels like an excuse for him to flex his artistic muscles. The mix of stretchy, expressive characters and the level of dense detail on everything feels like someone on top of his game affirming that placement. It also being a rare manga that has occasional full-color pages. While they look gorgeous, I personally prefer these half-measure panels that are mostly black and white with some element of color. It gives you the chance to take in Boichi's meticulous line art and paneling, but also letting the color give a particular object in said panel weight. That's not even mentioning just how striking and distinct all the characters look. Even the women! I mean, Mira looks like a Bratz doll with several guns strapped to her, and I think that's wonderful. I will admit though, I haven't actually read that much of The Martial King yet. For all I know, it could fall off hard, but I'm doubtful. As long as it stays a stunning art book with dialogue, I'll be more than happy to read it. So I'm gonna stop referencing the 2023 version of this video after this point. I like my stuff to try and stand on its own, but I do have an issue talking about the first 2 manga on my list. Those being Yokai Buster Murakami and Shonen X. And these issues are directly related to the 2023 video. This video is formatted the same way. I'll be talking about the canceled manga in order of least to most favorite. Last year, I opened the video talking about a comedy series that I didn't really like and a kinda generic shonen that didn't really click with me. This year, I'm starting this video talking about a comedy series I didn't really like and a kinda generic shonen that didn't really click with me. I think they all didn't resonate for different reasons, but I at least gave last year's manga the added bonus of, hey, maybe if you like gag manga, you'll like this. Or, I think this would be a good shonen for young fans to latch on to. Both of these things are as true for Ichigoki's Under Control and Icehead Gil as they are Yokai Buster Murakami and Jiangshi X. Jesus, I didn't think I'd have to say those titles again. Why do they have the same amount of syllables? These are things I genuinely believe, but also said as a way for me to be kind of nicer. These aren't reviews, they're more like show and tells, and I wanted to highlight a potential positive in something I didn't like. But for the sake of me just repeating this video conceptually and not making literally the same video, that means I kind of have to be meaner. I can't cut this year's least favorite some slack in the same way, because I would just be echoing what I said before. So yes, if you like gag manga, maybe you'll like Yokai Buster Murakami. If you have young people around you who are interested in shonen, maybe they'll like Jiangshi X. But also keep in mind, I'm about halfway through the allotted minimum time I've given to Yokai Buster Murakami and haven't talked about it yet because, well, I don't think it gives me a lot to talk about. Drama that doesn't click is funny. Action that doesn't click is funny. Comedy that doesn't click is, well, typically boring, but in all honesty, I found Murakami fascinating. I just never found it really funny for a multitude of reasons. The series is about two boys, Quinn, a yokai hunter that's afraid of yokai, and Murakami, a skeptic. Yokai Buster is built on two types of jokes, situational humor and Murakami making rude comments about yokai. And I don't feel like either work, but for completely different reasons. The situational humor in Yokai Buster feels flat because all of the jokes are told in order. It's plan and payoff, but the payoff is almost immediate. It's not a particularly rewarding read because nothing gets to build, not even mentioning that the payoffs are mundane. Look at the way the series starts. It's a in media res flash forward. Something that typically shows you an endpoint that we build up to. But no, Yokai Buster just shows you a scene, then 5 pages later, we're caught up to it. Or later in the series, when Murakami is chasing after a yokai, he talks about adhering to the speed limit, that even bikes and horses can get pulled over for speeding or DUIs, leading to a couple of pages later where Murakami turns on a siren so he can go a little faster. That's it. That's the extent of the joke. It's an 11-page comic that fills an entire page with fun facts about speeding tickets. Then there's what Murakami says to the yokai. All of his devastating remarks are fairly tame. Look, I get that Japanese is a tonal language, and it doesn't really have swears like we do in English. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. For my last video, I was reading a fan translation of Ultimo for logistical reasons. I think some fan translation groups kind of forget that they are in fact translating books intended for kids. Having your villains pepper in a fuck or shit every other sentence comes off as kind of weird. Not like in a amoral way, just more like how I think as people get older but still immerse themselves in media targeted at younger audiences, they start to lose sight of the fact that they aren't the core demographic of their interest. Which is fine. Whatever, like the things you want. I just find how people project their own interpretations of what something is versus how those things actually are to be cute, in all honesty. It can only really come from a place of deeply immersed and sincere fandom. Sometimes this results in people making weirdly gritty headcanons about children's media, or adding weirdly aggressive language where it doesn't really belong. Which also connects to a game I've been recently playing that I like to call Arsler Jump Scare. It's just whenever I'm reading some fan translation or early 2000s shoujo and then all of a sudden, bam, there it is. Obviously, it's a little different in these shoujo titles, but I think both are just different indicators of different parts of manga fandom. The shoujo examples being reflective of how people used to talk more commonly, and the fan translations show a lack of traditional professionalism, more flagrant editorializing on how these characters talk, and oh my god, I'm doing it again. I'm not even remotely talking about Yokai Buster Murakami anymore. To be clear, I don't want Murakami to call the yokai slurs. I just wish he was more clever. It could still happen for Daiki Ihara. He's still early in his career, only has a couple of short series before this. His previous work, Protect Me Shugamaru, also ended early. Shugamaru ran 26 chapters while Yokai Buster ran 21, but Ihara has another series that he worked on before and after Shugamaru. It's still technically ongoing, in the sense that it hasn't formally ended, but it's on an indefinite hiatus. It even got an anime in the form of an ONA on YouTube. Shorts! One Piece in Love's anime is fascinating. I feel like people might look down on this as an idea, and yeah, I have issues with it. Personally, I find the vertical aspect ratio kind of claustrophobic, but I actually think using formats like TikTok and Shorts to adapt this kind of gag manga is a good idea. This feels like a natural extension of the weirdo anime distribution, OVAs to ONAs to whatever this is called. I'd love to see a series like High School Family get this kind of treatment, especially because there isn't that much to adapt in One Piece in Love. Maybe it's just the adult iPad baby in me writing this while watching a video on my second monitor.
This sucks, by the ways.
But I think it works pacing-wise. It gives a chance for jokes or moments of romance to breathe. Comparatively, the show is still edited like an advertisement. After the title card in the first episode, there are like 4 cuts in 10 seconds. I admittedly haven't watched the entire show, but I also think it's interesting how different it looks from Ihara's art. Like, I'll be honest, I don't love his art style. One of my few notes for Yokai Buster is kinda uggy, in fact. I don't know that One Piece in Love the anime looks that much better, but I do think it's interesting how the show keeps a lot of the same shape language, but softens the edges. Literally, like it takes a lot of these skinny lines and sharp points in favor of slightly cuter proportions. Honestly, the more I look at the anime, the more I like its art style. Who knows, maybe Yokai Buster Murakami will be adapted like this one day. Which brings me to difficult subject number 2. Shonen X is difficult because it is shonen as shonen comes. In order for me to properly discuss my issues with it, I kind of have to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen, because I love JJK. I think in the modern landscape of shonen as shonen, Jujutsu Kaisen kinda sets a standard that everything new has to try and match. The Shibuya incident is one of the best arcs in shonen, period. I also think Shibuya happened way too early. Maybe this is just a case of stories leaving you wanting more, but I genuinely wish we got like an extra 100 chapters before Shibuya. Not even because I want that arc to hit harder, but because I want more things set up for after it. Because let's get real here, JJK fans. Shit gets kinda weird after the incident, and I don't even mean in the intended way. It's such an emotional high point that it feels like it never even tries to recapture those feelings. It shifts the status quo so aggressively, it's almost weird that we follow Itadori after. It's not the first story like this in shonen. York New City and the Chimera Ant arc are both very similar. I don't use those as examples because I love Hunter x Hunter, but I love Hunter x Hunter because of how it handles stories like this. Big emotional climaxes that see multiple characters go through life-altering events that would come to define them. Who these characters are before and after these stories are not the same. So now let's talk about Shonen X's Shibuya. I'll set the scene for you. The villainous force, the Wudo have invaded. Sifu Wuhong is killed. Zhu Kuei betrays the Daoshi monks. Lady Ju Tan is unmasked, revealed to be a teenager, and our main characters are forced to leave Shenzhen Village, the place they've called home their entire lives, burning before them, to name just a few things that happen here. Remember when I said an emotional high point like Shibuya happens too early, 83 chapters into a series? What if I told you Shonen X does this 6 chapters in? What if I told you that lack of impact you felt when I regurgitated all those story beats is what I felt as I read it? Pretty not great, right? Shifu Wuhong is a character we see in the first chapter and then rarely again until he dies. Zuquei is, yes, a guy we see hanging out with Xiaohu's dad, but outside him being a figure in group shots, we don't really know who he is. The same could be said for Lady Zhu Tan and honestly, Xianzhan Village as a whole. We never got a real sense of place for the village. We barely got to spend time with it before it's ripped away from us, but it's also never really ripped away. This happens to the characters. Obviously, it's not happening to us, it's a story, but like, I didn't read this and feel sad that I'd never get to see Xianzhan Village or the characters who inhabit it. I just saw the characters being upset. Now, it's kind of unfair to compare this to Shibuya, but let's look at something more similar, something that people also love, Midgar in Final Fantasy VII. People care about Midgar because you get to experience it as a place. Once you begin to think this is going to be a place you can revisit, maybe even a central hub, you can't. Your ability to see these places and characters you've become attached to is taken from you, unwillingly. We never have any downtime in the village, no opportunity to see how it functions or how our cast fits in with its population. So seeing it burned and taken over doesn't feel like a drastic status quo shift because we have no status quo. In general, I think a lot of Jiangxi X's story beats feel like this. Payoffs that are never properly built up. Which also brings me back to another difficult thing about my dissatisfaction with Jiangxi X. Something else that I have to once again look to some other manga contemporaries to accurately convey. Automaton is a superhero series about Akira, a high school student who becomes a robotically powered hero, a role he gains after being kidnapped and forced to choose between three options: helping a single man who provides for his family from drowning, saving 5 convicted criminals from being crushed to death, or doing nothing, staying trapped in the paralysis of the fact that whoever he doesn't save is going to be killed. Akira instead shoving his own arm into the mechanism powering both machines, allowing everyone else to live. Liber is a horror mystery series that follows a squad of very strange and intense cops as they solve very strange and intense crimes. The most recent being a string of murders in which women's bodies are being found in public with their limbs missing. The most concerning parts being the lack of consistency on what parts of these women are being taken and the fact that they are drenched in red wine. Across the Moon River is a sci-fi series with a particularly standout first chapter that had me constantly asking questions. What's the deal with the restricted zone? What's that emblem on the inside of Metatatsu's arm? Why is there such a strict curfew and so many security cameras? And lastly, why does it look like there's a person in a spacesuit inside the restricted zone? All of these elements subtly build up to its fascinating last page reveal that each following chapter expands on from there. So all of these manga make things hard for me to talk smack about Jiangxi X, because Norihiko Kurizono is a good mangaka. The more I read his work outside Jiangxi X, the less it felt like a dude who didn't know what he was doing, and more like they hired David Fincher to make a Naruto movie. The stuff I read was all seinen as opposed to shonen, and it feels like a better fit for him. I would see elements of how Kurizono likes to tell stories in these other titles, things that bothered me in Jiangxi X that felt more fitting here. I had a suspicion this might happen when I first started to read Jiangxi X. There were these flashes of graphic violence that felt out of place. Not just in how brutal they could be, but also because of how fantastically rendered they were. Not to say that the art in Jiangxi X is bad, I think it's the most redeemable quality of it, but there's a very specific way that a panel like this is presented that makes it stand out. Turns out because this guy is very accustomed to drawing this kind of thing. If you like Jiangxi X and find that part of his art appealing, try Liber, it's all about that. While I'm at it, if you enjoyed the dynamic of the main cast, give Across the Moon River a shot. If you like the way he presents action, read Automaton. Norihiko Kurozono unfortunately falls into this weird space of his most well-known work being his worst by a noticeable margin. I want to make sure to highlight how this isn't indicative of his art as a whole. He has a backlog of stuff worth checking out, and I'd love to see those brought to prominence over his recent attempt at shonen. Also, I didn't know where to put this, but did you know that the texting app Line has a manga distribution? And due to Company A being owned by Company B, Webtoon and Line are like first cousins? Liber was released through Line manga. I don't like saying that I'll know if I'm going to like a manga from the opening page, as that's quite literally one step removed from judging a book by its cover. But that opening page does matter, and I can't think of any other manga on this list that the first page is such a resounding thesis statement as Shoujo Nulls. If this page doesn't instantly tell you what you're in for, you probably never watched Mirai Nikki. So, I actually conceived that joke before I myself ever watched Mirai Nikki, so I went ahead and amended that, and wow, I'm not going to say it was a spectacular waste of my time. I got some enjoyment out of it. I get why people my age would have liked it when they were younger, but definitely was not for me. For the longest time, I was stuck if I wanted Shoujo Null to go second or third in this video. I don't particularly like it, but then I made the mistake of rewatching Hazel's Elfenlied video and have found myself very endeared to this specific flavor of edgy bullshit, because that's exactly what Shoujo Null is. A guy discovering a sometimes innocent, other times murder robot girl to look after and be affectionate towards. This time they're called Gijin. Not all of them have easily cosplayable little bear ears, but she does. I have a meh relationship to a lot of this edgelord stuff. It really comes down to how they're doing it. I think a lot of these types of stories kind of trap themselves in wanting to say something but not knowing how. Edgelord stuff can make people feel seen for presenting heavier subject matter in an unflinching way, but doesn't really challenge the systems that uphold said subject matter. I think creatives should challenge themselves and their audience a little more than just holding up a mirror. It's easy to make someone feel seen. I think actually taking the time to break down these systemic issues and how they shape us is just more effective if you want to be actually biting. But once I look past the boring politics of Shoujo Null, there are things I actually started to like about it. The body horror gets genuinely cool. There's this narc whose name I can't actually remember, but very creatively referred to as Horse Cop. As we get to see more and more of the Gijin enhanced humans, the character designs just get far more interesting across the board. As we learn more about the Gijin, the label of android becomes less applicable. My inability to properly describe what they actually are made them far more intriguing. I'll admit, I never really got into the main character, which is to say he's the perfectly acceptable kind of blank slate dude. Ryaha feels very much at home with those other protagonists in whatever anime you watched as a youth. But something I can never take away from Shoujo Null is its art. It has this ebb and flow of quality, switching between the nice and clean and loose and painterly depending on the scene. It gives Shoujo Null this captivating, expressive quality. That would be thanks to Akima. You should go check out his stuff online. I like his work in manga, but his full-color illustrations are where he really shines. If you want to see his art more unpolished and janky, you should search out his one-shot Drug It. It's about a dude who goes around junkie hunting on Twitch. It's not very good, but it's cool to see how Akima's art has grown. He's even working on a new series called Mansion and the Man-Eating Apartment. It's written by author Tanaka Ku, who I really only bring up here because this is Tanaka's third attempt at this idea, and I find that very sweet. Like, look at this first version of the story where he's doing the art himself. Tanaka has a clear passion for this specific idea, and I think it's great. Shoujo Null's writer, Kaine Nakanishi, on the other hand, has his own back catalog with some interesting stuff. Shoujo Null wasn't the first time Nakanishi and Akima worked together. They did a one-shot together called the Fireplay Club, which I would love to see if that's like a proto-Shoujo Null, but I can't seem to find it anywhere in English. What caught my eye about Nakanishi and Akima is how they're seemingly drawn together through transgressive art. Shoujo Null revels in its depravity. I see it in Akima with their older work I mentioned before, but it's a more clear through line in Nakanishi's writing, from "Farewell, all those who have not been kind to us," which is his supernatural revenge story, to what I can only really describe as the most cum-stained thing I've talked about on this channel so far. Before I get too pearl clutchy, let's be fair here. This is literal porn. Softcore, but porn nonetheless. For me to enter the house of a pervert, invited with open arms, and try and pass judgment on the shibari-bound girl in the closet would be a failure on my part. The sign on the door clearly reads, "Welcome to the special fetish classroom." If I truly wanted no part, I should have never walked in. The dude just seems to operate on a baseline of freak shit. Like, his most normal-seeming series is a romance light novel about a dude who gets groomed by his cousin. If I had to put a single word to each series so far, Yokai Buster would be flat, Shonen X would be slapdash, Shoujo Null would be excessive, and Kyokudo Necromance would be inconsistent. From the story to the art to even my feelings on it, Necromance could never keep it straight. I enjoyed it more the first time I read it. Something about the reread made it feel so hasty. If Dragon Ball's popularity brought with it a wave of martial arts manga, we are comfortably living in the Exorcist manga era, and there is no greater signifier of that than that pit in New Mexico filled with teenagers killing ghosts. See, there's Kaoru right there. You probably already got the deal with the story. Kid starts doing magic stuff because dead parents did magic stuff. It was never really boundary pushing in that regard, but its art has this undeniable eye-catching quality. It's admittedly eye-catching because it looks a little janky sometimes, but also every chapter it would hit you with something like this. This panel is genuinely one of my favorites from this last year. Just a haunting illustration. But if you aren't getting that, instead you're getting to see these fantastic creature designs. To put my very biased fandom wishes out into the open, I'd love to see someone like Fusai Naba take on a Sentai or Writer-esque manga. I just feel like the aesthetics of henshin heroes could work really well to their artistic strengths. I will say, more than other manga on this list, I'm struggling to remember this one, despite me reading it to completion twice. I feel like this kind of just went through me, but I think that's just a side effect of the series ending at 18 chapters. Kaoru meets his mentor, fights a ghost, gets a training partner, then it just rushes to the end. Necromance wasn't really given a chance to fully get its hooks in anyone. I was about to say that Kyokudo Necromance was the shortest manga from this crop, when it's actually the second, with two other series tied for first. Those just slightly shorter manga also stuck with me a lot more. We're talking about a difference of one chapter here. With about the same page count, a lot more goes on in those other series. This isn't Fusai Naba's first series in Jump. A couple of years ago, they had Aliens Arena. While it was short-lived, only 2 chapters longer than Necromance, it did gain a bit of a cult following. A cult which I am not a part of. Sorry y'all, this one kinda did nothing for me. I read it as it came out, and who knows, maybe I'd like it more now, but I feel broadly the same about it as I do Kyokudo Necromance, with the exception that I happen to like the way Necromance looked a little more. Like everyone I talk about on here, I hope Naba has a bright future ahead of them. I do think their art suffers a little bit in the week-to-week format. I only say that because the more loose, sketchy style just looks a little rougher. Not inherently bad, it even has a bit of a Fujimoto quality to it, but if you compare the art from their panels to the cover illustrations, the covers blow the page-to-page stuff out of the water. Just look at this one for Apollo, a precursor one-shot to Aliens Arena. I love this image, the way it's colored, the general composition, and yes, the neater line work just makes it stand out more to me. Necromance always felt like it was almost there in a lot of ways, and hopefully that next one, whatever it may be, will give Fusainaba a little more time to tell a complete story. So obviously part of why Exorcist manga are so big right now is because of short-term trend chasing with Jujutsu Kaisen, but I also wonder how much of that comes from creators who grew up with Bleach. I even include JJK in that. I would definitely put the next series on this list in that category as well, with a few other big sources of inspiration in there. That being Shadow Eliminators. Shadow Eliminators is also a shonen as shonen does. People get possessed, teenagers fight. The basic framework of a shonen isn't something I dislike, but I am glad that this is the last time I'll be talking about it for a while in this video. But before I get too ahead of myself, Shadow Eliminators is one of my favorite looking manga from this crop. The characters are all super striking. I'd even say they look made to be cosplayed. Their designs are a balance of distinctive but simple, given enough flair to be recognizable, but no piece of clothing that's too difficult to find or make. Part of the reason I'm so interested in how Black Torch does is I could very easily see Shadow Eliminators getting a similar treatment. I'm fixated so much on the visual appeal of these characters because, well, I remember when Overwatch blew up. Let's not pretend that good-looking characters in cool outfits means nothing. This isn't to say that Shadow Eliminator's only upside is its visuals. Outside of a general Bleach influence, there are two more shows I would personally speculate to be even bigger points of inspiration on Eliminators, primarily being Aoba and his brother have the same backstory and relationship as Vash and Million Knives. Yeah, there are probably other things at play here, like I'm sure that Masakazu Sugimori was listening to a lot of stuff while making Ace Attorney, but nah dude, Trial is just 1,000 Knives. And honestly, it's a comparison I bring up as a highlight. The dynamic between Aoba and Zen is one that I found instantly compelling. Not just for what it meant on its own, but for how it would expand the other aspect of the story that caught my eye, the part of Shadow Eliminators that I personally believe to be another big point of inspiration, that being Kamen Rider Phase. Okay, I swear I'm not just being an insufferable Kamen Rider fan or going on some guy who's only seen Boss Baby shit. Allow me to explain what I'm talking about here. The characters in Shadow Eliminators are a cocktail of aligned goals but opposing tenets or vice versa, which may just sound like good character writing, but this tightrope of interpersonal relationships is the core of Kamen Rider Phase, a show that follows several groups of characters with similar goals but conflicting ideologies and how those factors interact. A show where an anti-hero doesn't just mean a good guy who kills, but something far more complex. I have evidence to back up my claim too. Circumstantial, sure, but evidence nonetheless. Let's get the most tangential out of the way. First, the motorcycle woman in Shadow Eliminators. Second, the main character in Kento Amiyama's older one-shot, Shikigami, doing a big kick and wearing an even bigger scarf. Third, the supernatural force in Shadow Eliminators is people who have died and come back to life with powers, just like the Orphanok in Phase. Finally, and far more relevant, is just how ubiquitous Kamen Rider actually is in Japan. If I can say that Shadow Eliminators is inspired by Bleach while presenting no evidence, doing so with Heisei Rider is realistically just as probable a claim. To hammer home my point but kind of confuse my argument here, what I'm trying to say is, no, I don't know that Kamen Rider Phase was an influence on Eliminators, in the same way that I don't know for sure that Amamiya has ever seen Trigun. But going forward, I think we're going to see an uptick in shonen that's influenced by Rider. Not in a direct way, like I don't think the hot new shonen is going to have a dude with a belt posing and becoming a bug, but in smaller, less immediately apparent ways. Due to how nostalgia cycles work, we are now entering a new era where Kamen Rider's reemergence into pop culture can be fondly remembered. If you didn't know, Kamen Rider stopped having a weekly TV series in 1989 with the conclusion of Black RX, and they stopped making Rider movies after Kamen Rider J in 1994, which led to a 6-year gap with no new Rider before 2000. Nerds that are now making manga and in their early 30s would have been small child nerds between the ages of 5 and 10. The prime target for new shows like Kamen Rider Kuga, Agito, or Ryuki. Just look at Ruri Dragon, for example. This low fantasy slice of life manga about a girl going through dragon puberty is peppered with Kamen Rider Kuga references. Or my personal favorite example, Haru Itagaki having Kamen Rider Ryuki and gills on her Hear Me Out cake. She's very real for that. Ryuki specifically reaches far beyond that. While Gen Urobuchi has never directly cited Ryuki as an influence, its footprint can be felt in Madoka or even Urobuchi's own writer series, Gaim. Keiichiro Toyama of Silent Hill and Gravity Rush fame, when prompted to recommend a movie to watch, just any movie he enjoys, recommended Kamen Rider Ryuki Episode Final. I wouldn't even do that with Episode Final, and Ryuki is arguably my favorite Rider series. Kento Amamiya is one of these people that, for me, their success is a when, not an if. Amamiya seemingly has everything it takes to tell a good, engaging story. Shadow Eliminators is their first serialized series, and it's a hell of a start. That one-shot I mentioned in passing, Shikigami, is also solid. Amamiya's only work post-Eliminator so far is The Great Demon Lord is Sweating, a series about a half-dressed demon woman who takes baths. While I do think Amamiya is genuinely a good writer, their apparent affection for underboob might just be the thing that brings them notoriety. Now for a reprieve from the battlest of shonen to something chill, breezy even. Psych House is one of those series that I didn't super mesh with on first read, but as I revisited it for this video, it clicked. My feelings on Psych House went from it being boring to boring. The series follows Kotone Sayama and Nomuru Suya, two high schoolers with superpowers called Psychs, but not in the same way the other series I've discussed so far, because Psych House is a slice of life manga. It's a mingle simulator series. Psych House is for those of us who will look at a clock that looks like a giant wristwatch and small cars and think it's wonderful, not just because it's cute on its own, but because these characters find it cute. You see, Nomuru has the ability to change the size of objects, so that clock that looks like a giant wristwatch is a wristwatch. Those little cars are actually real cars. The residents of the Psych House use them to go on vacation. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that side of the series, as it only ran 17 chapters, but honestly, I think it's fine as is. Obviously, I'd prefer any series not to be cut short and end when its creator is satisfied, but I also think Psych House is kind of perfect as it is for what it is. It's a series you can start and finish on a nice lazy day. Even when its characters are dealing with an armed robber, it's never a series that feels stressful, which could sound like a bad thing considering the situation I was just talking about, but it's not that you don't care about its characters, just more so you know everything will be okay, because that's just the kind of book this is. I feel like I spent too much of my first read of Psych House trying to guess when the other shoe would drop, when the series would show me what it's really all about, when in reality it's been wearing its low-stakes, lighthearted story on its sleeves from the jump. I find it funny because that in and of itself is what Psych House is about, accepting those around you for who they are, quirks and all. It's the core of the series. Why does Nomuru wear a bucket on his head? What's up with him and Kotone? While you could try and come up with a million different answers to those questions, it's far more simple to just follow Occam's razor here. It just makes them happy. While the characters in this story were literally learning this, I was failing to apply that same line of thinking to the work itself. It's just a good time, man. So there is one extracurricular thing to note about Psych House. While I personally try not to speculate how or why a series didn't sell, it's worth noting that Psych House sort of had a controversy upon release. You see, there were some fans that took offense to Kotone using her powers to shoplift food instead of using social services available to her. This, of course, comes from the most reliable fans of shonen, online adult Japanese Twitter users. I bring this up in relation to the cancellation because some of the online chatter surrounding this series is speculation that this controversy would have led to a premature ending, but personally, I don't buy it. Again, I'm not interested in trying to guess why Psych House didn't sell. It's a question I'll never get an answer to, but also I think it's worth pointing out that this controversy was a thing in a subset within a subset of fans. Yes, it's very easy to find, but also just as easy to find other Japanese fans thinking it's a silly thing to get upset about. And even when trying to engage with this critique sincerely, I don't think it holds up. While Japan does have a lot of welfare services available, it's often frowned upon to take advantage of them. I genuinely think this kind of guy complaining about Kotone stealing would also complain about their shonen having a main character on welfare, because again, these are chronically online shonen fans. They aren't inherently going to complain all the time, but the ones who do certainly love to. Omonosuke Kobayashi's other work are enigmatic to me. Outside of Psych House, none of it has been translated into English officially or otherwise, until recently, that is. I've taken long enough writing this that Kobayashi's newer one-shot, Alb, is available if you know where to look. And it's sweet. I think Kobayashi has this real nice blend of slice of life mixed with a little wonder. Cozy is something I think shonen could use a little more of, and it comes so naturally to Kobayashi. They have such a clearly defined voice and style as a writer that I'll be more than happy to sit down and read whatever they have coming next. Hello, we are about halfway through the video. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying it, if you don't mind doing all of the good stuff, liking, subscribing, commenting, it genuinely means a lot to me. If you're an existing viewer, returning viewer, sorry this took so long to come out. I've been working a whole lot more. My job is minimum 40 hours a week these days, so I've been pretty busy with that. And in general, the way I do these Shonen Jump videos, they always take a really long time to come out. I say always, this is the second time I've done it, but I do want to have one for 2025. I do want to do a second one of this year. That'll come out at the end of the year. That I'm gonna do it a little differently. I'm gonna do stuff on my end, on the back end, that y'alls will never see. That will make it a little easier for myself, and then I might do some stuff that up front that'll make it a little different, hopefully to have them out sooner and faster. On top of that, I have a bunch of other ideas I want to work on, so if you're enjoying this video, again, be sure to stick around. I also have a Patreon. My loving paying patrons are visible on screen right now. Shout outs to them for sticking it through. Again, took me a really long time to make this video, and on top of that, they already will get to see this treat is available, but I actually have my first Patreon exclusive video out now. It is a segment I cut from this video. There was originally a manga on here, Cypher Academy, that I was going to talk about. I actually had the segment written and recorded for a good long while, and then just the more I thought about it, the less I felt like it was really applicable to the conversation I'm trying to have, and was, I don't want to say detrimental in the sense that it is like causing harm, but more so like it is kind of in opposition to how I want to talk about manga, and how I think, just personally, I think I see people talking about this kind of stuff a lot, and something I want to move away from. So, but if you want to hear that, along with me going in more detail about why I cut the segment and why my feelings changed on it, that is available on my Patreon. And my patrons, who again are listed here on screen, could have already seen that video. You can join the Patreon for $1. And yeah, that's about all I really have to update on. I hope you've been enjoying the video, and let's get back to it.
2024 in memoriam.
Comparison is the theft of joy is a quote that I disagree with. Nothing exists in a vacuum. To treat a piece of media as if it doesn't exist alongside contemporaries or because of influences is silly. To take two stories that are dealing with a similar subject matter or style and discuss how they handle them is natural. It's how we can connect trends or burgeoning styles. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Rudo Gachiakuta shouldn't be categorized as a post-Denji shonen protagonist. But I also think if your only way to assess something is by comparing it to something else, that's also flawed. If you are the type of person to say, have you seen Battle Royale? It's like Hunger Games, but better. I think you should try to develop your critical skills a bit more. The idea that two pieces of media that share a base concept are only that base concept is diminutive. But with that being said, let's talk about our next manga, Dear Anemone, which is tricky. Because I don't know how to talk about Dear Anemone without making comparisons to Hell's Paradise. It's way too easy. I say that as someone who wants to discuss this manga without just recapping the story, but also because the opening chapters hit so similarly. It's hard to talk about anything else. Dear Anemone follows Gaku as he and several others embark on a rescue mission to the Galapagos Islands, which gets completely derailed. Things go horribly wrong. Strange human-animal hybrids start brutalizing the members of Gaku's team. It would be one thing if Hell's Paradise wasn't as recent. It ended in 2021, and Dear Anemone started only 3 years later. The series takes a more science fiction approach to this idea, while Hell's Paradise is fantasy, but the island setting, the rate that members of Gaku's party are killed, and the degree of violence in which they are killed are notably similar to Hell's Paradise. I also think it's worth noting that the one-shot that Rin Matsui made before this, simply titled Anemone, is incredibly different from the series, to the point that I wouldn't even say the two are related. The only real connective tissue between Anemone and Dear Anemone is the plant growing out of the main character, and the name, of course. But how the plant looks, what the plant can even do, are again vastly different. I'm not trying to say that Rin Matsui purposely copied Hell's Paradise, because they do handle things differently, but again, the comparison is unavoidable. Dear Anemone does have unique qualities about it that I think make it worthwhile on its own, primarily being the art is incredibly strong. The character designs in particular stand out to me. The humans all feel very distinct, but the monsters are the real winners here, such as Horrible Chameleon, Terrible Bird Thing, or my personal favorite, oh gosh, no, that's not right, Rabbit. What makes the monsters stand out in particular is Rin Matsui's attention to detail and texture, not just bringing these pages to life, but creating this unsettling contrast between the more traditionally rendered manga characters and the more realistically rendered monsters. It makes them feel dangerous, giving them a physicality on the page. That is a cartoon character. That is a real thing, and I never want to meet it. The series also has some really fun paneling in it. This section from the first chapter is a favorite of mine. The way it conveys the distance between Gaku and Anemone, but the drips of blood connecting them, it keeps the scene's two major characters in focus while making them feel equally important. I think Rin Matsui has developed a distinct art style for themselves. I haven't read everything they've made, but I think between Dear Anemone, Black Milk, and Anemone, you can pretty clearly see how that style has developed. Anemone is kind of rough. Again, not in a bad way, it's Matsui's earliest work, so it just doesn't have the polish of their current stuff, obviously. Black Milk is an interesting one-shot. You can definitely tell that Matsui is working as an assistant on My Hero because the villain is just straight up evil Deku. Like, I don't think this one-shot looks one-to-one with Horikoshi style, but there are definitely moments where you can see that influence. I really cannot undersell their illustration skills. Peep this piece they made to celebrate the finale of My Hero. Maybe it's just me getting softer, but I really feel like a majority of this crop of mangaka have what it takes to make the next big hit, but it's just out of reach for now. Every year being a Jump fan, we have our collective heartbreaks, and in all honesty, these final four manga could all be considered that heartbreak for me. Mama Yu Yu, Two on Ice, Martial Master Asumi, and Green Green Greens were all complete packages. From each year, there's always one series in particular that gets the most attention and the most remorse around its ending. A couple of years ago, it was Hunter's Guild Red Hood, and this year, it was Green Green Greens, which makes the sequencing for this next portion really interesting for me. I would say that I love all of these series. This list is ultimately ordered in how much I would recommend them, so I've kind of put myself into splitting hairs here. Not just that, but 3 of them are sports manga. There are aspects of them that are easily comparable to one another, with all 3 trying to capture what it feels like to get obsessed with a new hobby, with each one focusing on ice skating, MMA, and golf respectively. And if compared, yeah, Green Green Greens is really good. The series accenting these moments masterfully with expressive art, not by capturing a character's emotions explicitly, but rather using its pages to express what a moment feels like. The moment you find your putt, the moment you exceed your own expectations, and the main character is just like me for real. Haku is aimless. He is constantly feeling like everyone around him is passing him by. His friends are trying to make video games, studying for med school, and are aiming to go pro in baseball. But Haku is just Haku. He never applies himself to anything because he'll always be in the shadow of everyone else, but what he doesn't realize is if he did just apply himself, if he did find that passion that digs into him, he is unstoppable, an endless geyser of potential waiting to burst, which is why Green Green Greens didn't make it into my personal top 3. While everything positive I said about this series still stands, and there's honestly even more I didn't get to, I don't personally feel the need to champion this series. I'm pretty sure most of the people watching this video have probably read at least one of these series already. Green Green Greens is very likely that one series, with it having a very vocal cult fan base as it stands, as I mentioned earlier. And being honest, I myself want to be more challenging. I think if people come to my videos and their only takeaway is the thing they already like is really good, I kind of failed. I want to take a chance to highlight the stuff that speaks to me, and that I personally feel could use more attention. While I again think Green Green Greens is good, it was also missing that quality that made it uniquely meaningful to me. I think the reason people latched onto it is because Haku felt relatable, which is good. I think plenty of people have felt like this, and Kento Terasaka's ability to capture those feelings is good. So something I've felt while watching this back is how often I rely on phrases like the next big thing or successful interchangeably, which sounds like I'm saying that these artists can only be judged by their mainstream success, which isn't something that I feel, but it is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it would be cool if more people enjoy a story made by someone I like, but using that as a lone metric is diminutive. I want to appreciate the craft of manga. I don't want to speculate on why a story gets canceled because I think it's vague and broad, but also trying to define success is equally vague. These creators are getting to make stories for a living. That's beautiful. I don't want to sit here and just discuss these works on how likely they are to get a Uniqlo tie-in collection because that's not interacting with the actual work itself. Popularity doesn't make art meaningful. Art becomes popular because of its meaning. The reason I bring this up here is because what I'm feeling is quite literally what the first chapter of Green Green Greens is about. Haku literally opens the series by directly correlating different skills of athletes to how much money they make. He's unable to notice anything that makes these people special beyond how financially valuable they are. I'm writing and recording this bit long after I finished the script, so I will probably make this kind of comparison again in this video, but it is something I'd like to veer away from because I want more than that. Which is also why making any kind of listicle or top 10 is silly. It's sort of essential to this style of video, like I need some kind of framing device, but like how do I weigh something that I really love versus something that is literally making me confront how I create? It's a weird self-imposed conundrum. By the way, if you notice over the course of this video, me making this area around my desk look nicer, I did that on purpose. I saw the first clip and bullied myself into making it look nicer so you don't have to. But again, this is about my personal preference, and I think each of these next 3 series really tap into something that makes me want to hold them at a higher level, even if I think Green Green Greens does certain things better. I think for most good sports manga, the sport in question doesn't really matter. It's not a golf story. It's a story about finding oneself and self-betterment using golf as the means to explore that. Green Green Greens is a story that could be told without golf, but that isn't to say that golf doesn't matter to the story. This series works because Kento Terasaka very clearly loves the sport. This story is the kind of thing that only someone who deeply cares about golf could relay to their audience. Also, this series made me give a shit about golf, man. That's something. Not like I'd go out there and play it, but I was interested. Green Green Greens isn't Kento Terasaka's first series in Jump. Previously, he had the rugby manga Beast Children, but given how Kento handles sports, I'm more than willing to give it a shot. Okay, well, like, I did read a little of the first chapter, and the main character seemed almost like too dumb to function, but I'm willing to give it a shot, honestly. What I find far more enticing is Terasaka's work going forward. He made a romance seinen one-shot called Hidari Jingoro about Hidari Jingoro, who, if you don't know, was a legendary Japanese artist, and I do mean legendary quite literally, as it's debated whether or not he was a real person. Jingoro is often cited behind many masterpieces across several different art forms, painting, wood carving, and even acting, which is why whether or not he was actually one person is often put into question. Now, this one-shot doesn't really lean into any of that history and just uses him as a very passionate wood carver, but it's super interesting. And if this one-off gets developed into a more full series, I think those other avenues could be explored. But even in this short page count, Terasaka's ability to make stories about people deeply passionate about their chosen craft is present in Hidari Jingoro. So I should probably start putting my money where my mouth is and do some gosh darn explaining on why both Martial Master Asumi and 2 on Ice just hit so much harder with me by talking about Martial Master Asumi's hard hits. Because it's about MMA, like hard hits, and it hit, like it hit hard with me. I do not watch MMA, nor do I practice a martial art, but even I, a layman to the world of MMA, will occasionally have a moment from a UFC come to my feeds, usually being a flash knockout. It's quite easily the most popular and exciting part of professional fighting. I mean, even looking beyond MMA to, just fight comp videos, the thing that people like seeing the most is a knockout. That moment when the momentum drastically shifts from 2 people on seemingly equal footing to a decisive winner. Even looking at UFC's own YouTube channel, their most popular video is a knockout compilation. While these moments are fun, they also aren't wholly reflective of what actual professional fighting looks like, which is generally a lot closer to... While big hits and exciting stuff can easily catch the eye of the average person, the average fight in its entirety is comparatively boring. It's a lot of small, nuanced interactions, 2 people having a physical debate. It's dense with technicalities that are exciting to the people who are in the know, but to the average viewer, can just be two people rolling on the ground a little bit. And I think it's that appreciation of the technical that made me fall in love with Martial Master Asumi. One of the first things I saw people saying online is that the series had boring character designs, and I disagree. They aren't boring, they're functional. While they aren't the most exciting thing you've ever seen, each character makes up a distinct enough silhouette so that when it comes to our characters to fight, you are never lost, which is incredibly impressive. I'm sure anyone who's tried to draw grappling, or sex, let's be honest here, will tell you that making two humans contort and interlock like this and have it still clearly understandable is not easy. Especially so when you're working exclusively in black and white. The reason he can do this isn't one skill though, it's three. Anatomy, motion, and impact are all kind of perfect here, not just through his ability to convey those concepts in what he draws, but also in what he doesn't. Something I think Kawada masters is the economy of the page. No line or space in a panel is wasted. Everything is deliberate and has a purpose. Look at this panel where our main character Nito delivers this punch. Look at how the negative space of the page adds to the moment, the impact itself. The fact that we don't see the exact point where Nito is making contact with Taiga emulates what Taiga is feeling. It's not a stab or a slash, it's a massive pain surging through his side. Then look at Nito's elbow. No, really look at his elbow, here. He doesn't have one. Well, he doesn't have a fully rendered one. It's made up of these lines of motion here, and it so instantly captures how fast he's moving that nothing seems out of place. That's not even touching on how much the lines of impact themselves add to this scene. Look at the lines coming off Taiga's body. They are a sunburst that can all be nearly perfectly traced back to where Nito is hitting him. Now compare those to the lines coming off Nito, which aren't flowing the same direction at all. They're a wall of straight lines crashing into Taiga. Look at the intensity of the lines the more you move down Nito's arm. They become bolder and more frequent the closer you get to his forearm. It's showing you what point of Nito is moving the most, but it's those lines at his shoulder that tell you he's throwing the punch with his entire body. The motion up on his shoulder is just as important as the motion at his elbow. It's a subtle flourish that communicates how he's moving in such detail you could nearly recreate it. I think I should at least give a little lip service to the actual story of Martial Master Asumi. This series follows Nito Asumi, the goodest boy around. Nito loves his family, but with his dad's passing, his mom working all the time, and his oldest brother leaving the family behind, it's up to him and his sister to look after the family. This being their two younger siblings and their grandfather, who is suffering from Alzheimer's. His grandfather in particular he spends every evening with, which actually leads Nito to wanting to be a caregiver for the elderly. Nito is incredibly non-violent and even gets squeamish just watching MMA, but still does because his friend really enjoys it and wants to start training himself. Nito is so opposed to violence that he stands up for people who are trying to bully him just to prevent any kind of fight from breaking out. That is until that aggression gets pointed at someone else, and only then he snaps. The friendly Nito we've seen up until this point gone, as everything that Nito's grandfather has been training him on comes together. You see, when Nito is spending this time with his granddad, that is when Baku Asumi is at his most lucid, when he's training Nito in the Asumi-style martial arts, a grappling-focused spin on MMA, something that Nito never really took seriously, but his older brother Kazuro absolutely did, when Kaz moved away, becoming a massive star in MMA, the feared Kaz Low, which now leads Nito on his new goal in life: be the guy who beats Kaz Low in a professional ring. Just like Green Green Green's not being about golf, Martial Master Asumi isn't a story about fighting, it's a story about fighting. Which is to say, Martial Master Asumi isn't about the act of violence, but rather fighting in many forms. Yes, as a thing to hone and get better, but also as a way to connect, a second form of communication between you and the people you care about. And this nicely leads me into my next moment I want to break down. Kazuro and Nito's first spar against each other. This scene has one of my favorite artistic moments in the whole series and in this whole video. Right before the fight, as Nito and Kazuro are warming up, Nito's friend now pulls up and puts a helmet on him. No, I'm not joking. This is genuinely one of my favorite things Kawada does artistically in this series. Asterix, if I'm right. So allow me to explain. Kazuro and Nito have very similar silhouettes. Obviously, their designs are overall similar with a few key differences. Kazuro's giant wolf tattoo, and the fact that his hair is made up of generally more evil-looking shapes. These small touches make them stand apart while looking related, but those details that separate them work best when you're looking at them straight on, which doesn't really happen in MMA. A lot of the unique qualities that differentiate their designs will be lost in the chaos of grappling. While it makes complete story sense for now to put a helmet on Nito, Kazuro being a professional while Nito is just starting his training, I personally believe the actual point of the helmet is to change Nito's silhouette, which is great. Not just because it's story justified, but because it works. Try looking at any of these panels. Nito's helmet here makes it clear as day what's happening, even if we can't see their faces. Their hair isn't in its natural resting position, or Kazuro's tattoo is covered. You know exactly which one is Kaz and which one is Nito. This is one of those moments that's so simple but is so effective. It was something I started thinking about in between my first and second read of the series, and now feel pretty confident about it being intentional. Kawada is clearly a talented mangaka. I eagerly await whatever he makes next, and will definitely be reading his previous series, Hinomaru Sumo, while I wait. Which leads myself asking the question, wow, I have 2 more manga to talk about that I have even more to say about on this list? And the answer is kinda no. While I don't necessarily have as much to say about a series like 2 on Ice, what I have to say just means that little bit more because god damn it, I love this series. 2 on Ice is about Hayuma Minakoshi, who is self-trained in ice skating after watching Kisara Satome skate in a competition. What Hayuma didn't know is that that competition was one of Kisara's last as a singles competitor. Years later, Hayuma and Kisara meet again by chance, with the two becoming a skating pair. But just like Green Green Greens and Martial Master Asumi before them, 2 on Ice isn't really about ice skating, it's about relationships. Specifically using ice skating as an avenue to explore different relationship dynamics, many of which aren't even romantic, which I find genuinely really refreshing. We have the Kirishima siblings, a skating pair who are brother and sister. Kotaro and Yuni, who recently ended their romantic relationship but continue to skate as a pair. Then we have our leads, Hayuma and Kisara, who I'd also put into that non-romantic category, which isn't to say that they would never get there, but that's what I think makes 2 on Ice so good. There's a scene where Hayuma and Kisara try for a pair spin, and Hayuma can't do it. Not for any lack of physical ability, but because being face to face with Kisara, that intimate, is difficult for him. But again, not because he's harboring romantic feelings, but because she was his idol. Literally his inspiration for getting into ice skating. The reason he is who he is as a person now is because of her. Hayuma being face to face with Kisara, putting himself this close to her as an equal, is hard for him. Similar to Green Green Greens, 2 on Ice didn't have to be about ice skating, but Elk and Sumo's passion for the sport is felt in every page. A story like this could only come from someone who loves skating deeply, but also they don't let their love of the sport blind them to the reality of these athletes. Now, I'm fairly inexperienced with sports manga, but how Two on Ice handles the real mental stress of these young men and women is the highlight of the story for me. Hayuma feels inadequate to be Kisara's partner. He can see the difference in their skill. He can see when they perform together that she has to put the brakes on so he can keep up with her. Kisara struggles with the fact that Hayuma is a well of potential. Potential combined with the fact that he's likely to have a longer career in the sport than she is, has her questioning why he'd even want to be a pair when single skating is so much more lucrative. I've never seen a sports manga tackle that kind of feeling that Kisara goes through here. In her eyes, this is just a moment they overlap as Hayuma is on the rise and Kisara is on the decline, which is again her perspective. It is true that men usually retire later than women in skating, but Kisara is already looking at this as someone who's already been rejected by the greater world of skating before. Two on Ice doesn't hold back when it comes to the worst parts of sports, from Kisara being hit by her old coach to what happened to Kisara's old training partner, Takayuki Sora. So, men in sports being victims of sexual assault is a very real, common, and horrible occurrence. The way El Katsumo not only presents that, but how it affects Takayuki as a character feels real and uncomfortable. When we first meet him, he has this intense resentment towards any woman he meets. At first, we think it's because a majority of his fans are women, and Takayuki never really gets a moment to himself, with even his public practices being put under intense amount of coverage and scrutiny. While this certainly doesn't help his mental state, a moment like this is in line with how a lot of famous victims of sexual assault act. I respect the fact that Elk as a writer can so clearly adore something but not let those feelings idolize the reality of these situations, that celebrity isn't all it's cracked up to be, that there is artistry to be enjoyed, and that can come from some pretty dark places. Most importantly, that what we see under the bright lights is only part of these people. Just because they choose to show that part of themselves does not mean that we are entitled to every part of them. While this is El Katsumo's only published series, they have a few other works. The only one I can find in English being Railway Gateway, a one-shot about two high school students who find themselves trapped as everything outside their school building has become an endless ocean. Unlike Two on Ice, this is a straight romance manga, but it goes some really interesting places. I won't go into too much detail, but what this story confirmed for me is that Elk always has something darker in their work, whether it be the assault of Takayuki Sora or what's actually going on between the main characters in Railway Gateway. Elk seems to be almost resistant to presenting their stories in a pristine world. They write about very human characters and the unfortunately horrible shit that can happen to us. Just like with real people, these moments don't define their characters, but is just part of them. It's a through line that I'm glad to see in their work, and more excited to see how it develops through their career. Which brings us to our final series, the manga from last year that for my money was legit just the best one of the batch. As much as I wanted to sit here and not just tell you that something already beloved was really good, sometimes manga fans get it right. And while I believe Green Green Greens was the most popular from this crop of manga, Mama Yu was right behind it. It's not just my last manga on this list, it's also the Final Battle series I alluded to earlier. If you're unfamiliar, Mama Yu is about Corleo, a young man who is born with the hero sigil, an emblem that not only grants him powers, but marks him as humanity's savior in the demon-human war. It's an honor that's passed down through a pseudo-reincarnation line. When the hero dies a few months later, the mark will appear on the hand of a baby. There's even an inverted version, the Demon Lord, a chosen demon who wields similar abilities that will also be passed down if they are to die. But it is also an immense weight. Not only do you have every human looking up to you as their savior, but can Corleo live up to that? Will he be remembered alongside other legendary heroes, or simply lost to the annals of history? The only asterisk on this being, there is no demon-human war. The hero before him, Hollow, brought an end to the 800-year conflict and ushered in an unprecedented era of peace, which is objectively great for everyone. The roles of human hero and demon lord have become antiquated, so much so that the current demon lord is his adoptive mother, Mamama, but it does leave Corleo feeling without a purpose. The hero sigil a constant reminder of something he feels he can never live up to. Corleo doesn't have the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he also has to grapple with what it means to be born into a role that no one needs anymore. Obviously, this being a shonen battle series, he does become a big hero and have some really cool powers, but this introduction to our main character and this world is something that instantly caught my attention. Well, that and it looks nice. Yeah, I know, the art is good, time for that part now. While there are a lot of elements I could highlight about Mama Yu Yu's art, specifically, I want to highlight the paneling, because this is genuinely some of my favorite examples of it in a manga ever. From small moments like this POV shot of Corleo being framed by his hair to this scene here. This moment is from the same chapter where a demon hits Corleo with a psychic attack. The way the hand creeps down from the negative space of the page, then pulling back the borders of the panel, Corleo feeling his body being ripped to shreds, all while images of the mysterious demon lord End fill his mind. But my favorite example comes from chapter 3, in this scene with Penelo. It's a showdown between one of the many embodiments of Demon Lord End and Mamama's former commander. But this is a one-sided encounter. In a blink of an eye, Penelo cuts End to pieces, the speed and precision of these attacks being beautifully highlighted by the panels themselves being cut to pieces. Is what it looks like. That negative space in the panels isn't just negative space, that is Penelo's blade. Look at how it's illustrated here. The handle that extends into the negative space, the same negative space that we see cutting the panels of End. Why do I say this? This isn't just stylish, but also perfectly conveys the lightning fast movements of Penelo, so much so that I can't even really tell you what his sword looks like. Does it have a single sharpened edge, or is it dual-edged? How long is the blade? Is the end of it curved or squared off? I have no idea how to answer those questions because Penelo is moving so quickly we can't even comprehend what we're looking at. And I think it's genuinely gorgeous. The way it opens on one end and closes on the other makes it feel like your eye is following a labyrinth. Mama Yu Yu is filled with these moments, but what I love about them is that they're just there. The series so regularly experiments with the layouts of a page that none of these panels feel out of place. That might make it sound like it would lessen their impact, but I think it's actually the opposite. Mainly because there isn't much consistency in how these layouts are played with each page feeling evocative in ways that are unique to their scenes. I didn't even mention how gorgeous the illustrations are themselves. I mean, they're fucking great. They just truly speak for themselves. They make this series a joy to look at, but the layouts make it a joy to read. Overall, I think the failing class of 2024 is a really solid crop of titles. There's only a few I'm really down on, and even then, these mangakas' work outside of Jump is absolutely worth checking out. Especially so if you disagree with me. If you end up reading any of these, let me know. At the time of writing, Americans failing to properly discuss Japanese media is a bit of a hot topic. When I say I want creators to be more challenging, I do include myself in that. If I'm going to speak about art, I want to make sure I actually have something to say. Not just that, but I don't want to just regurgitate already existing memes and talking points in place of meaningful commentary. Also, I don't want my videos to replace someone experiencing a work for themselves. To be clear, my work comes from a place of sincere fandom, but I don't want to just be fandom. I want to talk about why I feel a certain way about a work. Not that my feelings are the end-all be-all either. They are just my feelings. Making any kind of video like this, I'm inherently going to sound like I'm trying to speak authoritatively. It's one of the flaws of this format. I want to speak as if I'm having a discussion with you, the listener, but that is not our relationship. We are speaker and audience. The reason I try not to label these as reviews is that they are simply reflective of my feelings at the time of writing. I also reserve my right to change these opinions as time goes on. Even making this video, my thoughts on some of these series varied quite wildly as time went on, many times due to unrelated external factors. Like, I enjoy Yokai Buster Murakami a little bit more now, knowing that this series led me to find out about YouTube short original anime. Like, that's so interesting. Looking at last year's video, I would have probably put Pianisissimo at the end of that video instead of placing it where it is now. Possibly. I don't know for sure, but I certainly think about it more than any other series above it, which accounts for something. This also isn't to discredit review or critique, just that I am an outsider. I am a white hip-hop fan and an American manga fan. There are many pieces of art that I enjoy and are not made with me in mind. It doesn't matter if I've been into anime and manga basically as long as I can remember. I don't have any form of ownership over many foundational pieces of art I love, which is completely okay with me. I can accept that I am an outsider. There may be things I have to learn more about in order to fully appreciate them. There will be cultural differences that just go over my head or just don't resonate with me, but that's not a bug, it's a feature. If I do end up making a 2025 manga video, it might look a little different, flow a little different, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy these books, every strange little bit of information I can scrape off of them. The good, the bad. Manga is pretty cool.